The moment the black luxury car door slammed shut against his hand, Arman Riaz felt something deeper than pain crack inside him. A quiet dignity he had spent years rebuilding shattered in front of strangers who didn't even bother to look at him as human. The sun stood high in the sky, pouring golden light over the glass towers of the city, but for Arman, everything felt cold. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that no one's worth should be judged by their job or clothes, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Home with Dad. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Arman stood still for a second, his hand throbbing, his breath uneven. He was used to being overlooked, ignored at best, disrespected at worst. But today was different. Today the humiliation wasn't subtle. It was loud, public, intentional. The woman who had just slammed the door on him didn't even turn back. Zara Vance, CEO of Vance Dynamics, one of the fastest growing tech conglomerates in the country, walked ahead in her sharp heels, her posture straight, her face set in that practiced expression of control and superiority. She didn't look back at the driver she had just insulted, as if he didn't deserve even a glance. To her, he was just another driver, replaceable, invisible. But what she didn't know, what no one in that parking lot knew, was that Arman Riaz owned half of the very company she commanded. Arman slowly withdrew his hand, flexing his fingers, forcing himself not to react. Years ago, he might have spoken up. Years ago, he might have demanded respect. But life had taught him patience. Life had taught him silence. It had not, however, taken away his memory. And today, something about her voice, her tone, the way she had dismissed him like dirt beneath her shoes, it stirred something long buried inside him, something unfinished. The security guard near the entrance glanced at Arman with mild sympathy but said nothing. That was the way of the world. People saw injustice, but silence was safer. Arman adjusted his worn but clean shirt, walked back to the driver's seat and sat down. His daughter's small drawing taped to the dashboard caught his eye. A house. A son. 2 stick figures holding hands. Me and Baba, it said in shaky handwriting. His chest tightened. For her, he endured everything. For her, he stayed quiet. But even silence has limits. The day had started like any other. Arman woke early, made breakfast for his 7-year-old daughter Mayer, braided her hair the way she liked, and walked her to school under the soft warmth of the morning sun. He carried himself with quiet care, like a man who had learned that even small moments mattered because he had lost too many. Years ago, Arman Riaz was not a driver. He was an engineer, a co-founder, a visionary. He had built Vance Dynamics from a cramped rented office, working day and night with nothing but ideas, caffeine, and belief. Back then, Zara was different too. Younger, driven, ambitious, yes, but not yet hardened. They had been partners, equals, but success changes people, or perhaps it reveals who they truly are. As the company grew, investors came, power shifted, decisions became colder. And one day, Arman found himself pushed out, not completely, but strategically. His shares remained. His voice did not. He left quietly, not because he was weak, but because at the time he had something more important to protect, his family. But fate is not kind to those who walk away peacefully. A tragic accident took his wife just 2 years later, leaving him alone with a child and a grief that words could never hold. Everything else, titles, wealth, ambition, lost meaning. He stepped away from the world he had built. Let Zara run the empire. Let her believe she had won, because Arman had no energy left to fight, or so he thought. Now, years later, he lived a simple life. He drove for a private car service, choosing anonymity over recognition. He wanted peace, not power. Stability, not status. But peace is fragile, and today it had been disturbed. Zara stepped into the company building, greeted by employees, who straightened their posture the moment they saw her. Respect, or fear, followed her like a shadow. Her heels echoed against the marble floor, sharp and rhythmic. She was used to control, used to being unquestioned. What she wasn't used to was being wrong. Inside the elevator, she checked her reflection, adjusting her blazer. She didn't notice the faint smudge on her sleeve from brushing against Arman's car. She didn't notice anything that didn't serve her narrative. Her mind was on the board meeting scheduled in 30 minutes, a major decision, one that required approval from the silent co-owner who had never shown his face in years, Arman Riaz. The name annoyed her. He had become a ghost in her life, a constant reminder that she didn't fully own what she had built. Despite running everything, half the company legally belonged to him, and he had refused every offer to sell. No meetings, no negotiations, just silence. It felt like defiance, and Zara hated defiance. Back in the car, Arman watched the building for a moment longer than usual. His grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. He wasn't supposed to be here today, but the assignment had come randomly, or maybe not. Fate has its own ways of bringing people back to unfinished chapters. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Board meeting. Today. It's time. Arman stared at the screen, his heart beating just a little faster. He knew who it was, the only person who still believed he should reclaim what was his. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he looked again at his daughter's drawing, and something shifted. Not anger, not revenge. Something quieter. Resolve. Upstairs, Zara stood at the head of the boardroom table, presenting her strategy with precision and confidence. The room was filled with executives who nodded at every word she said, their approval almost automatic. Everything was under control, until the door opened. Late arrivals were not tolerated. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she turned. And then, time slowed, because the man who walked in was not supposed to be here, not dressed like that, not looking like that, not existing in this version of reality she had constructed. Arman Riaz stepped into the room, not as a driver, not as a memory, but as the co-owner of Vance Dynamics. The room fell silent. Zara's face lost color just for a second. Because in that moment, everything she believed she controlled slipped. The past had returned, and it was no longer silent. Arman walked calmly, his presence steady, his expression unreadable. He took a seat at the far end of the table, placing a simple folder in front of him. No dramatic entrance, no raised voice, just presence. And somehow that was more powerful than anything else. Zara forced herself to recover, her voice tight but controlled as she resumed speaking. But something had changed. Her words no longer flowed the same way. The confidence had cracks now, because she remembered. The man she had humiliated minutes ago was not beneath her. He was her equal. No, he was the reason she was here at all. The meeting continued, but the air had shifted. Every decision now felt heavier. Every word carried weight. Arman spoke only once, and when he did, the room listened. Not because he was loud, but because he didn't need to be. He asked one simple question about the company's direction. One that exposed a flaw in the entire strategy Zara had just presented. A flaw no one else had dared to point out. Silence followed. Zara tried to respond, but for the first time in years, she wasn't fully prepared because she hadn't expected him, hadn't prepared for him, hadn't respected him. The meeting ended without resolution, but something far more important had begun. A shift, a reckoning. Later that day, Zara stood alone, in her office staring out at the city. The same city she had conquered. The same skyline that once felt like a victory, now it felt uncertain, because power without humility is fragile. And today, she had been reminded of that. There was a knock on her door. She didn't say come in, but the door opened anyway. Arman stepped inside. No driver uniform now, just quiet authority. For a moment, neither spoke. The past hung heavy between them, unspoken, unresolved. Zara finally turned, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in her eyes, only realization, because some mistakes don't disappear. They wait, and when they return, they demand to be faced. The sunlight poured through the glass behind them, casting long shadows across the room. Two people standing at the intersection of who they were and who they had become. And for the first time in years, Zara Vance didn't feel like the most powerful person in the room. She felt human, flawed, and accountable. As the silence stretched, Something deeper than business filled the space: regret, understanding, and the fragile possibility of redemption. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Stories like this remind us that kindness, respect, and humility matter more than status or wealth. And before the ending, I want you to comment one word: respect. If you believe every human deserves dignity, no matter their role in life. Because, in the end, this was never just a story about a CEO and a driver. It was about how easily we forget the value of people, and how powerful it is when we remember. Arman didn't come back for revenge. He came back for balance, for closure, for something bigger than pride. And sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones who rise to power, but the ones who choose not to use it to break others. The sun slowly dipped toward the horizon, but its warmth still lingered, like hope. And in that light, two lives stood at the edge of change, not as enemies, but as people finally ready to see each other clearly.